Okay, I welcome you all with love. Today we're doing Parsha Teitzei. It's a very important one, although it may look mundane at a certain level. It says when you go out to war. It doesn't say if you go out to war. It says when you go out to war. In other words, it's saying we're constantly at war. Now, who are we at war with? Okay, you have outer wars? Okay, we got that. But it's the inner war we're battling. The forces of darkness within us. God has given us the forces of darkness and evil, as well as the forces of good. The battle's constantly going on. Once we get that, we can relax with it and know that and be prepared to be in the consciousness of the battle. People would love to just be in the comfort zone. There's no battle, I'll wall myself off. This, Teitzei says, no, that's not really what's going on. We are always at war. Mostly with our own consciousness, mostly with the forces of light and dark within ourselves. So if we kind of get that, it helps, because you're not caught by surprise. You're not seduced by the temptation that there's a comfort zone where you could hide out and not face yourself and not face things. And this actually is key to understanding the essence of Am Israel. What's that? Let's go back to Abraham. Called Ivri. What is that? The boundary crosser. It is inherent in the whole Torah, back to the beginning, Abraham, that we are boundary crossers. We're troublemakers, as the world sees it. Other people say, oh, that's crazy. No, it's not crazy. It's our role. It's our role not to be complacent. It's our role not to let people just hang out in their comfort zone. It's our role to awaken the world. As Isaiah says, the role of Am Israel is to be a light to the world. You can't be a light to the world unless you're a boundary crosser, unless the world may see you as a little crazy, but I call it high-level normality, okay? Because the role of Am Israel is to be that boundary crosser, is to challenge people, to not allow people to get stuck in their comfort zone where there is no spiritual growth. And so, in the coming of the Messiah, it is very important that as many people wake up as possible. That's really key to the whole understanding and key to this Parsha. Our role, that's my role too, I mean it's a spiritual teacher's role, is poking. Don't let people get stuck in the comfort zone, because it's not right. People like their comfort zone, but spiritual evolution is the role of Am Israel. Spiritual evolution is the role of the spiritual teacher. So that being said, we can kind of start to look at a variety of examples it gives. Okay, and the first is if you see a beautiful maiden, beautiful woman, in the heat of battle, remember it's always a war, you are allowed to take her, but this is a really important Torah teaching. You're not meant to rape her, which is common in war at that time. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take her, and when the immediate battle is over, get away from the issue of lust. She sits there for a month, her hair is shaven, and different things happen so you can see who she is. And you can see if there's something else besides lust. But I want to talk a little bit deeper than something as mundane as if you see a beautiful woman, don't rape her. I mean, the Torah is really saying something really deep way deeper, which is within the world. Classically, we're talking about the four fallen sparks of holiness. And the role here is to the beautiful woman metaphor, because we've got to get a metaphor away from sexism and all that. The beautiful woman metaphor is the spark of the divine. And our role, which is to release those sparks of the divine, wherever the situation is. Now, it also makes a point. You have to be a little careful when you're, because you don't want to get caught up in lust and confusion and comfort zone. Because what I am also saying is, within everybody, there's that tendency for the comfort zone. We want to release the sparks of the divine, the boundary crosser. So it's just part of Israel, part of the basic assignment, part of what's needed for the Messiah to come. It also talks about something interesting. It really says if you get married out of lust, it takes us into divorce and also the rebellious child. Well, if the marriage isn't really about evolving spiritually, it's saying in your comfort zone, or it's out of lust, then the result of that can be divorce and also the rebellious child that may come out of it because the two parents aren't really compatible. And the child is affected by that, becomes rebellious. So it kind of acknowledges that if things are out of lust, this is not a basis for a foundation, and that's why it talks about divorce. Because the teaching the Torah is it's better to get divorced than to hate someone. And we see that happen in divorces. I mean, as a psychiatrist and a couple therapists, I see what happens. It can devolve into hate, which is detrimental to everybody. Also makes another statement, which is a little subtle, but very important. It values the finding of your soulmate. What do I mean by that? The teaching in a more subtle plane is that if you're married but that person isn't your soulmate, it actually honors getting divorced to be with your soulmate. Because there's a higher value in that. But you better be very sure about all that. Okay? Because it's very easy in relationships to be, again, in your comfort zone, and then your soulmate comes around. And the purpose of soulmate is not to let you be in your comfort zone. It's there to help elevate you spiritually. Poking, prodding, creating enough agitation to help you grow spiritually. It seems funny, but I don't mean agitation in a negative way. I really mean the role of soulmates is to help each other truly be their authentic self and to poke and prod. And it's not for comfort, but it's for evolution. That's the role of soulmates. So we'll just kind of keep that there because it does imply that. Now, it also talks about if you build a house, before you go up on the roof, put a fence around the roof. Why does it say that? In the deeper Torah teachings, in the Kabbalistic teachings also, which are, it implies that we may rise to very high heights of understanding, top of the roof. And we need to create some kind of protection, okay, that if we are falling, it says that the Zadok will fall 7 times, but we'll get up 1 time more. But it also, the fence has to do with humility and lack of pride, where if you're going to fall, it comes in a gentle way. Okay. Now, it doesn't say don't build a house. It doesn't say don't go up on the roof, which would mean just stay in your comfort zone, it's cool. No, it doesn't say that. It says build your house, but put some protective barrier around it. That's the difference between crazy and crazy wisdom. Crazy is you don't have any barriers and you fall off the roof. Literally, as a psychiatrist, I used to, working in inpatient, the test I would have for people, I say, look, I really want you to get out of here, okay? And I know you do too. So here's the rules. If you follow them, guess what? They're going to say, fine, that person doesn't have to be hospitalized or drugged out. So I'd say, look, and it was a test. Are you really crazy? Are you really psychotic? So you can't follow the rules? Or do you have it enough together that, knowing I will get you out of here, but you have to follow the rules as a sign that you're mentally healthy enough to be out? Just think about that for a second. It's a really, I thought I was being very clever. It's a really good test, and it really helped people because then they had a motivation to get out. And I'm not going to put you on medication either. Because I know that the medication controls you and so forth, but that doesn't really allow you to evolve spiritually. And in my work, I have obviously shown that people do better in 5 years, follow-up, being off medication. I won't go into it, but there's a lot more relapses for people who are on medication. Different story, and it affects your brain. We get the tardive dyskinesia. There's lots of things. I'm not trying to get off the topic. It's on the topic. Put a fence around the roof so you don't fall off, or you're going to fall off, but so it's an easy fall and you can get up again. If you are actually crazy, psychotic, you can't see the boundaries, and that's gets you stuck in the hospital, but also helps you fall off the roof, and the fall is harder. So kind of think about it, because these metaphors, these teachings are very, very, very deep in the big picture of things. So it's a test. Now, it also says don't stay in the comfort zone. Build a house, put barriers so you're humble and you're not in pride. So if you fall, it'll be a gentle fall. Okay, because the nature of spiritual life is running and returning, running and returning. Go up to the house, get your insights and understand, then you come down, but you want to come down gently. Now that's healthy. That's not crazy. Okay, it may look crazy, but in the world of crazy wisdom, we know all the rules, morals, and ethics are not real. And we want to go beyond that to awaken normality. But at the same time, you've got to follow the rules as you need to do to get out of the hospital. So it's always this paradox of what people face in their lives. So we've covered some key teachings. I want to go back to a little bit of a bigger view of Torah. So in Bereshit or Genesis, it gives us the absolute liberation teachings. Okay? And then in Shemot, Exodus, it gives us the teachings about being free. How do we get out of Egypt? Okay? Then, when we hit Vayikra, it's the teachings to the priests and how to create peace, and that Bidmar is that we're unique individuals in the desert. And finally, where we are now is how, and Devarim, how to live your daily life in a holy way. Just think about it. So we've got all these things, but the end of the story is, and this is what this Parsha is about, is how do we live our day-to-day life in a holy way, in a way that sanctifies, in a way that elevates us spiritually. Clearly, it's not about comfort zone, because we are, as it says, when you go out to war, okay? And the role is to liberate the holy spots. Very, very important in this thing. So we have to, there's a little risk here, is what it's saying. And don't be contracted. Don't limit yourself. It's inherent. And it's inherent as part of the whole Jewish history back to Abraham. Now, it's constant struggle between good and evil. Now, there's always something unusual happening. So I'm going to go to the story, which is the basis of what brings the Messiah. Yehuda is going out, and he's having a trouble because his two sons had died because they didn't relate to Tamar correctly, and put semen on the ground and so forth. So Tamar knows, she knows that something very important is, and she has to get the seed from Yehuda. If it's not from the sons, it's going to be from him. So she dresses as a prostitute, and he gets seduced. It's like the only time in his life where that happens. He's like, whatever took over was like profound, and then he had a hard time believing it until she showed, well, here's your sword and here's this and all the things, the evidence that you were the one. But what came from that? King David came from that. The Messiah is to come from that. Wow, let's think about that. And so that's a classical story. So the idea is, even if we're not, even with the, let's say, evil side, because you could see it that way, that has to be dedicated to God. Now, I am not saying do evil things and dedicate to God as if it's a regular thing, but that was an exception. Exceptions happen, and there's a whole theory about how did that happen. Well, the Messiah has to be hidden to be able to come forth. So for that reason, it has to come from a little bit what appears to be a dark place, but it's sanctified. Again, exception, not the rule. That takes us back to the beautiful captive. Are there sparks there? Yeah, but you have to sit and see that. So we have all these things happening. The message is, don't stay in your comfort zone. The role of Israel from the time of Abraham is to go out of the comfort zone, to be a boundary crosser, to awaken people, be a light to the nations. You can't do that in your comfort zone. It doesn't work that way. So that finally takes us to Amalek. So the classic story of Amalek is there were stragglers in Amalek, which really a force of darkness, began attacking the stragglers and causing a lot of havoc. So who are the stragglers? They were the people a little slow getting out of Egypt as they're being freed. Their will to be free was less. They actually would like to go back to the comfort zone of the slavery in Egypt, because at least you get fed and it's safe, you know what's kind of happening. The stragglers. And it says something very, very important. Not just be aware of Amalek, but destroy the tendency of Amalek in your life. So what it's saying is, hey, there are obstacles, things happen, okay, but Amalek, the comfort zone, I would like to go back to Egypt and kind of, eat meat and do all those things. that has to be destroyed. So it makes a distinction here between difficulties, obstacles, or the forces of Amalek to stay in your comfort zone, which ultimately eats you up, destroys you. And that's what was happening. So at the very end of this Parsha, a specific point is making about Amalek. You must defeat Amalek permanently. No mercy. A lot of times it talks about mercy. Okay? And a lot of times it talks about the Torah ideal. But what's clever here is it doesn't say you have to go from 0 to the Torah ideal. For example, Garden of Eden. Don't eat, don't kill, don't eat animals. It really says be a live food vegan, is what it says. But if you look very closely, there's always dispensations because not everybody's ready to go there. So that's why they have kosher. Why? There's so many rules of kosher, it's like, this is too much work, I'll just be a vegan, okay? If you're going to really follow it. And that's on purpose, because it wants you to move to the Torah ideal. But it doesn't say, be that now, because too many people would be discouraged. What it says is, we're creating conditions that will help you moving it in that way. And that's a way to understand the Torah. Not as absolutes, but as a compassionate directive of how to get back to the Torah ideal. Now I picked the vegan vegetarian since that's a real comfortable one for me to talk about. And the key, after the time of Noah, when he wasn't ready to be Gan Eden vegan anymore, live food vegan, it's okay. You know, do the best you can with it, and we'll give you ways to move back. And that was the teaching of really a lot of the great Torah mystics, like Maimonides. He said, okay, this is a guideline to move in this direction. But you don't have to be there instantly. But it does say, get out of your comfort zone, get out of Egypt. People were constantly like, can't we just go back to Egypt? I mean, it's throughout the whole leaving. It's like, and Moses said, no, you can't really do that. Okay? We're Am Israel. We're supposed to bring the light of God to the nations. It's not like, go back to your comfort zone of slavery. And that brings one final point. There were so many things of the daily life here. But there's another point which says, do not kidnap people. Well, that seems pretty obvious. Why would they put that in there? Because again, on a little bit deeper plane, it doesn't mean just kidnapping people and taking them. It means don't let your soul and your soul purpose be kidnapped. So what happens in relationships so often? One person tries to control the other person, every aspect of their life. Always checking in on them, always. That is what they're talking about. So it's a very clear, you talk about relationship, but we go a little further. Look at today's world. We got masks, attempt to control, and the one world government attempting to control. This is kidnapping. So the Torah is very specifically saying, no, kidnapping is not accepted at any level, whether it's actually capturing somebody, whether it's in relationship where one person is controlling the other person, or whether we are talking about the one world government that wants to kidnap the whole world. The principle is right there in it. It's like, wow, this is so deep. I mean, so deep. It's mind-blowing, because the Torah is meant for all the generations. And we just have to see it in a bigger way. So don't let yourself be kidnapped. It's against the Torah. It's against spiritual evolution. And that is a major struggle we're seeing today. one world trying to kidnap everyone. And the Torah says, no, you really can't do that. A Sith relationship, don't allow yourself to be kidnapped. Even though, just like people want to go back to Egypt, well, we got fed, we got all these things, but we were slaves. But it was comfort to be a slave. That was a big struggle that was going on. And Moses saying, no, we're not going back, forget it. God has meant us to be liberated. So when we get the level of Teitzei, it's talking about, yeah, we're always at war with the dark side within ourselves, as well as the outer war, like the one world government. And our goal is to be aware there's a war and be victorious, to never let our spirit be enslaved again. So may everyone understand that. Comfort zone is seductive, being the slavery in Egypt. But God's message in this Torah, in this Parsha is, no, we must be the light of God, inspiring everyone else. And to do that, we ourselves cannot be enslaved in our comfort zone of Egypt. May the light within you expand. May you never be comfortable with your comfort zone. And may the whole world wake up to the Spirit of God and to liberation and to life and liberation. Amen.